By 1942, the German military had established a pace of conquest that few believed could be halted. They had overrun Poland in 4 weeks and collapsed the French defense in just 6, capturing Paris and securing dominance over Western Europe. But to maintain that momentum, the empire needed fuel. In the summer of 1942, Hitler ordered his armies to drive south toward the oil fields of the Caucasus. Standing directly in their path, anchored on the banks of the Volga River, was the city of Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army arrived in August, immediately applying the same blitzkrieg doctrine that had worked across the rest of the continent. The assault began with a concentrated air campaign. In a single day, the Luftwaffe dropped 1,000 tons of bombs on the city center, killing 40,000 people and leaving the infrastructure in ruins. The plan followed a rigid logic. Use air power to suppress the defense, then move armored divisions into the wreckage to clear the remaining resistance. The bombardment succeeded. By the end of August, Stalingrad was no longer a functioning city, but a dense, jagged landscape of collapsed stone and skeletal buildings. The Luftwaffe had achieved its objective of leveling the city, but in doing so, the German military had physically altered the nature of the ground war they were about to fight. The bombardment created a physical paradox. Flattened buildings didn't clear the streets, they filled them with impassable mounds of brick, concrete, and twisted rebar. This new topography stripped the German panzer divisions of their primary advantage. Rapid, mechanized movement is impossible when the path is blocked by jagged debris. With the German armor stalled, Joseph Stalin issued Order 227, not one step back. The Soviet defenders realized that since they were outgunned in the open, their only chance for survival lay inside the ruins. Combat devolved into what the Germans called Rattenkrieg, the Rat War. It was a claustrophobic struggle for individual rooms, basements, and sewer pipes, where the distance between armies was often the thickness of a brick wall. The rebel had neutralized the machine. The war was no longer a contest of engineering, but a test of infantry endurance in the most hostile environment imaginable. Despite the stall on the ground, the Luftwaffe remained a constant threat from above. To stay in the fight, the Soviets had to find a way to take the German air superiority out of the equation. This led to hugging the enemy. Soviet commanders moved their front lines within 50 yards of German positions. From the air, it was now impossible to bomb the Soviets without simultaneously destroying the German soldiers standing right next to them. This forced intimacy turned the city into a meat grinder. It was a world of constant sniper fire and sewer ambushes, where the average lifespan for a new soldier was less than a day. By drawing the Germans into this war of attrition, the Soviets had trapped them in a conflict that their military was never designed to win. Through the autumn of 1942, the German Sixth Army continued to bleed out, fixated on capturing single factories and ruined apartment blocks, while their overall strength dwindled. While the Germans focused on the city center, the Soviets were quietly gathering over 1 million fresh troops on the vulnerable, thinly held German flanks outside Stalingrad. In November, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus. This massive armored pincer movement caught the overextended German forces by surprise. The two Soviet forces met behind the city, cutting off the Sixth Army from all supplies. The hunters were now the hunted. 250,000 German soldiers were caught inside the very ruins they had spent months creating. Inside the pocket, the winter of 1942 was a slow collapse. Without food or ammunition and facing sub-zero temperatures, the trapped German army began to disintegrate. Hitler refused to allow a breakout. He ordered his men to hold their ground, essentially choosing to let them starve and freeze rather than acknowledge a tactical failure. In February 1943, the remnants of the Sixth Army finally surrendered. It was the first time an entire German field army had been captured in the war. The cost for this single city was staggering. Stalingrad had consumed 2 million casualties, effectively turning the ruins into a graveyard for the Sixth Army and the empire it served. The psychological impact was immediate. The perception that the German military machine was unbeatable had vanished, replaced by the reality of a massive public defeat. This loss crippled the Wehrmacht's ability to mount large-scale offensives. For the rest of the war, the German military would be forced into a defensive retreat on the Eastern Front. This shift in the East changed the war in the West. Without the Soviet victory draining the German army at Stalingrad, the 1944 invasion of Europe would have faced a far more capable defense. The ruins of Stalingrad represent the moment the Blitzkrieg met its limit. The tactics that had conquered Europe were broken in these streets, opening the long and difficult road to Berlin.